Welcome back. Thanks for your company. Well, if you've got young kids, the chances are that yoghurt pouches, baby food sachets, microwave meals are regular items in your shopping trolley.
Yeah, new warnings though from experts suggest some of those convenient products could be exposing children to a surprisingly high level of microplastics. And as concerns mount, there's a growing call for mandatory packaging labels. Joining us now is Dr Nicholas Chartres, a microplastics researcher and associate professor at the University of Sydney. Nick, thanks for joining us. So what's your main health concern with plastic in packaging at the moment?
There's two things. We know that there's migration of chemicals that are used in plastics into food. There's a really large database that's used globally called the Food Packaging Forum, and they look at all the chemicals that are used, about 15,000 in food packaging, and there's evidence to show that a lot of products that we'll be exposed to have chemicals migrating into the food. And what's also of concern is that a lot of those chemicals are also known to be hazardous to human health.
Okay. We often hear about endocrine disrupting chemicals. What are they? What do they do to us?
They're basically anything that interferes with our hormones, and so that could be how
we run our bodies, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
So they can how we produce the hormones, how they get distributed, and also how we metabolize them. And the downstream implications of that is that we have different health effects, like neurodevelopmental effects, so things like ADHD and IQ associated with it. Things like metabolic effects, so obesity and diabetes are linked to them, but also to hormone-sensitive cancers like breast and testicular cancer. So they're really bad chemicals to be exposed to.
So these big companies that are producing these pre-packaged products, do they understand the impacts of microplastics and chemicals that we're ingesting?
Yeah, I can't speculate, but I'd suggest the evidence is there to show that these chemicals are harmful. As I said, there's up to 15,000 that have been used in food packaging, and there's no transparency. So when you pick up a packet, you wouldn't know what cocktail of chemicals you've been exposed to. It could be things like bisphenols, phthalates, which are used ubiquitously in plastics, and also things like PFAS chemicals that a lot of people know about. And when these get tested, they typically get tested one chemical at a time, but normally in a plastic package you'll have lots of those chemicals combined together, and so we don't know the effect of those when they're combined together.
They're really hard to avoid, right?
Are.
And we're going to talk about your calls to try and change the packaging.
Sure.
But before we do, it's particularly because we've spoken before about it's when you heat them up too. So I'm thinking about those microwavable rices and things like that. I mean, are you supercharging these chemicals then?
Yeah, it basically breaks down the molecular structure of the plastic, so it helps the chemicals leach out of the plastic. So trying to avoid ever heating any type of plastic container, be it, like you said, the rice satchels, or even just like a Tupperware container.
Or in a dishwasher. Or
in a dishwasher,
like that,
but particularly when it's contacting food, you want to try to avoid that, definitely.
What about those convenience pouches of different foods that you can take away with you? You can pop in a bag. Even, I mean, kids particularly, but also adults exposed to it too.
Yeah, I mean, anything that's plastic and is contacting food, it's going to have potential to leach these chemicals. I guess the other issue we have when we think about those foods, they're typically ultra-processed foods. And so there's a huge body of evidence now to show that ultra-processed foods are harmful to human health on their own, but then if you add the additional risk factors of the chemicals and also the microplastics, we really need to try to get people to understand that they should be basing their diet on whole foods, trying to shop at greengrocers, farmers markets when they can. That's not necessarily an equitable solution for everyone, but when you can, try to avoid food packaging because we know they're not good for our health.
And the bigger issue being changing regulations around how our food is being packaged.
Exactly.
All right. Nicholas, thank you so much.
Not at all. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in.